segment of this Friday edition of New Dawn from Ogun State Television. And this morning, I want to take a look at another critical issue that affects every Nigerian, no matter where you are, no matter where you work. And I was talking about the proposed 10% value-added tax increase that federal government is about to bring on board. You recall that under former President Muhammadu Buhari, he met it at 5%, we raised it to 7.5%, and President Bola Tinubu, the incumbent president, met it at 7.5%. So he's taking it up now to 10%. And the excuse or reason has been that government needs to generate more revenue so as to make the economy running the way it should be. So I've been joined online all the way from Lagos by financial analyst, Mr. TUNJI. Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me loud and clear, sir?
All right, thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me this morning.
All right, our other guest, Timothy SORUNKE, will be joining us in the studio, and very soon he will be with us. So let me begin with you, Tony. Now, how do you welcome this development? Though it's at us come on stream, there is a proposal that may likely see the light of the day. How will you react to that?
Well, I mean, it's a mixed reaction, to be honest, because, I mean, there are two ways to look at issues like this. In terms of policy development, in terms of revenue generation, and in terms of tax impact assessment. That's one bucket to look at it. The other bucket would also be in terms of the socio-economic realities of a lot of Nigerians. So when we look at the two on both sides, it's a conversation of a capitalist economy and a social welfarism angle to the conversation. So that's why I said it's mixed feeling, because when you look at it right now, people are literally battling with everything. Inflation, food hike, increase in petrol cost, and all of that. And then potentially VAT is also about to be increased. Do not also forget that minimum wage that was also increased is yet to be implemented. So people are literally battling on a day-to-day basis with high cost of living. Now, an increase in VAT, which is almost an essential tax that everybody would pay for one way or the other, literally means that this would further impact the earning power of a lot of Nigerians and further dig people down into the poverty line and put more constraint on people. So yes, when I heard the news, which is something that the administration has been toying with since last year on whether or not it should be increased, whether or not certain tax elements should be put together into one single bucket and all of that, I think it's a right initiative, but at the wrong timing, because right now, a lot of Nigerians really just want to breathe and survive. Okay. So this entire news of tax hike is not something anybody wants to listen to, even me as a person.
Okay, you said at the beginning of your remarks that it's a mixed feeling that is coming at this material time. But you have only painted a picture of how it will impact people, in quote, negatively. But definitely you also agree with me that we, as a financial expert analyst, you know that it is not good for government to keep borrowing and using that to service the budget, to pay overhead and the likes of that. The other thing, it is also necessary. And again, going by what Bill Gates, who is still in Nigeria, said about a few days ago, that Nigeria tax system is poor, the VAT needs to be increased and the likes of that. Don't you think this is a time also for government to also show up our own revenue generation in order to service capital expenditure and the likes of that?
Well, so when I said that it's mixed feeling in terms of policy direction for the government, I totally agree that we need to begin to look at our different tax ratios and see how we can show up revenue looking at tax remittances. But there are multiple angles to tax conversation. And I mean, I'll piggyback on what you said about what Bill Gates said about our tax system. To be honest, in Nigeria, it is not as if we cannot generate enough from tax remittances. The biggest bone of contention is the amount of people that evade tax. Now, look at it from multiple angles. The people that have the capacity to evade tax are the people that are within the higher income bracket, and these are the people that should literally pay more. What you see happening in Nigeria is that the people that should pay less are the ones that are being chased and hounded for tax payments, while the people that should pay more are the people that have the capacity, the wherewithal to actually evade taxes. So we need to, first of all, restructure our tax remittance system in such a way that everybody is properly captured in the tax net. Everybody is paying taxes according to your earnings, according to what you are making, and you are remitting that into the government coffers, first of all. Then we can now begin to look at our different tax elements in tandem with current realities. That's why I said, in terms of policy direction, yes, we can look at it and say, okay, there's a systemic implementation model or dynamics to tax increase, which is what this current tax committee has said, to say we will constantly review our tax rates based on current realities. If you look at current realities, global macroeconomic standard, we would almost see that, yes, a 10% hike in terms of VAT is almost not avoidable. But when you look at the social economic realities of Nigeria, then it is more problematic. So we cannot create policies outside of the socio-economic realities of the people. So we need to look at where the people are, first of all, and then we can also say it is time for us to hike these prices or to hike the tax rates so that people can actually pay more. But unfortunately, why a lot of people are now complaining is because the people that will eventually bear the brunt of this hike are not the people making these laws. Because these people have the wherewithal to go and set up offshore accounts in tax savings where their wealth and the monies they've gotten is not taxable. So it is me and you that are making our small money that will eventually have to now bear the brunt. And that is where a lot of people are beginning to have issues. If you want to tax everybody, let the system be transparent enough that it cuts across all strata, from the low income earners to the high income earners, and then we can justifiably say that everybody is being taxed, and then whatever we are doing in terms of generating more revenue via tax is applicable to all and not to just some.
Okay, I quite agree with you on that. But again, the budget for this year by the federal government has a deficit of 9 trillion naira, and it's been projected that total expenditure will be 27.5 trillion, and of course, that's with a projected revenue of 18.32 trillion naira. So there is a deficit of 9 trillion naira, and it has to come from somewhere. So how do you think, apart from that, if you are not totally in agreement that VAT should move from 7.5 to 10%, what do you think government need to do to really extend its dragnet and get more revenue on board to cope with this 9 trillion naira deficit?
Well, there are multiple ways through which government can generate revenue. Tax is just one of the elements of revenue generation as a government, right? But unfortunately, I think that we need to really break the conversation down into multiple points, and that's why we are having all of these issues that we're having. First of all is the fact that aside tax and aside oil, we are literally not using, we literally have little or next to nothing that is generating a lot of money for us as a country. So we need to sit back and go to the basis and say, what are the things that we can either sell or export as a nation, right, that can actually earn us a lot of foreign income. Don't also forget that this is also a country where investors are technically losing confidence, and a lot of them are moving out. So when we literally hold on to tax, it's just one of the elements, right? And unfortunately, VAT, company income tax are just a very few things. There are a lot of other earnings that we can look out for, right? In terms of our export potentials, if we actually look at a lot of revenue that we can earn from export potentials, the active use of our different ports, right? for transactions and all of that, we will see that, yes, there are potentials. Do you know how much we can actually make from foreign direct investment into the country if we actually harness all the potentials of our social infrastructures? So tax is just one of the very few things. In more developed countries, right, conversations around tax elements are usually not something that we hold on to in terms of idea. Our ministries, our agencies, what exactly are they using to generate? How active are they in terms of driving the core of what they are doing? We have ICT infrastructures. What are we doing with those IT infrastructures? In terms of mining, what have we been able to pump into our mining industries, right, to ensure that we are swelling the revenues that we are generating from all of those angles? We are, as a nation, fixated on what can give us the quickest and easiest win. So it's just this typical lazy man's approach to dealing with issues. So we sit down and we look at it and we say, we need to make more money. How do we make more money? Either we borrow or we tax the people more. No, there has to be more ingenious ways to think of. We have the potential, we have agricultural potential in this country. If we invest XYZ amount into our Greek industry, how long can it take us? From 2024, right, can we create a project plan to say by 2026, we are exporting massively and we are earning from export potentials? You also look at and say internally, we take a lot of our monies that we are earning in the country, we take it offshore. Can we look at some of those products that we are massively importing and begin to technically streamline them and create a local base for it, a local alternative for it, so we can recycle our money within the economy in Nigeria? That is how we can actually make more money. But unfortunately, we are a nation where, I mean, for the longest, we think of how can we, the quick fix. We typically don't think long term, and that's why administration in, administration out, it keeps looking as if we are facing the same problem, because a particular administration comes in and the first thing is there's a budget deficit and we need to create a quick win. And to create a quick win, we look at the potentials. See, I mean, technically yesterday I was looking at the spending pattern of this current administration, and you'll be so shocked that nothing has technically changed from what it was a few years back. Right? Nothing has technically changed from what it was a few years back. This government has constantly been raising Nigerian savings bond, right, which is a form of debt. Recently, there's a push for the dollar bond, which is another form of debt. So you keep saying that it is almost a rinse and repeat pattern that we've been doing. Can we constructively now start looking at tackling? This is an administration that came into place and said, oh, our refineries will get working. Thankfully, somebody has made it work. But the promise of the Port Harcourt refinery, we are still hopeful for it. So can we say we want to target our own infrastructures, get them working, and begin to locally look for alternatives that can fetch us money? Imagine we are sustainable in terms of petrol, right? Locally, we can meet our needs. Now imagine what our exports to neighboring African countries will be generating for us. Imagine that we're able to crash the naira to the USD to a very considerable point, right? Somewhere around 600, 700 naira to a dollar. Imagine how much we'll be earning in terms of FX. So it takes a very serious administration to think constructively beyond quick fixes, quick meals to solve our problem, to earn more money, to generate more revenue, to meet our budget deficit. Okay,
so invariably, too, you are saying that because Nigeria runs a mono economy, that is a disadvantage, because we need to divest the economy and make sure that there are other sectors of the economy that will bring on board enough revenue. But before you respond to that, I also want to add this before we go on a break, that government on its part has also removed import duties on some food items, so that those food items can come in bulk into Nigeria. Importers can bring them in and the likes of that. And also, VAT will not be paid on some of these food items. So when we return, we'll share your thoughts with us on that. We'll go on this break now. We'll be right back. Join us again. From the Atlantic across the savannah to the Sahara, we rise, a land of the free, we know they tire. We dream great, our spirit is undying.
Resilient, rooted like palm tree, we swear in colors, with undying demand, with that solution, we ignite passion, yeah. Education, we have more than just a nation.
We are Nigeria, we are Nigeria, strength and unity, we know they carry lives, we are Nigeria, together live the dream of a land with great destiny. We are Nigeria.
I am the real Nigerian. Brought to you by the National Orientation Agency, NOA.
We now have joining us live in the studio Mr. Erioluwa Timothy SORUNKE, a chartered accountant, a tax expert, and of course, immediate past chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, Abeokuta District. Mr. SORUNKE, you're welcome to the program.
Good morning, sir.
So this is a familiar terrain that you really want to be drilled on, so as to know why government will need to increase the VAT, value added tax, from 7.5% to 10%. But before I bring you in, TUNJI GBESAN in Lagos online. So I want to have your thought now, TUNJI. So to the issue of import duties being removed from food items, and those food items too, for the consumption purpose within Nigeria, there won't be any VAT to be paid. Don't you think government has done enough to do that before increasing the value added tax to 10%?
Well, I agree that it's a good way for the government to create some sort of incentive in terms of removing VAT and custom duties on food items. However, there's something that we also need to be very aware of. Those are just elements in terms of earnings to the government. It does not necessarily reduce the prices of those commodities, because the prices of those commodities are in tandem with the pricing of dollars. So if I have to import a bag of rice, foreign rice for example, removal of excise duties and custom duties will technically bring it a bit lower. It does not technically bring it back to the point I used to buy it before, because wherever I am buying for has had to source for US dollars to buy that in and get it into the country. So yes, some respite in some form, but it still technically does not allay the problems of everybody. So yes, the government is doing its best, but like I said, the focus still has to be on local production. The focus still has to be on local alternatives to all of these things. We can keep creating incentives. As much as we want to call it, they are still incentives. Remove tax, remove excise duties or custom duties on all of these things. They are incentives. The real pain point, right, is the cost of importing itself, which is benchmarked against the US dollars. The higher the US dollars go, the more cost we are incurring on importing those things. So till we can get to a point where there are a lot of local alternatives, when I can go to the market and buy rice at the price it is being produced at the local market without having to technically, ask an average businessman that deals on imports. The reason their prices fluctuate and they say today's price is not tomorrow's price is because if I buy this cup at 25 naira today and the exchange rate is 1,500 to $1, if tomorrow morning I have to buy that same cup and the rate of the dollar has gone to 1,700, then I am benchmarking against 1,700. The excess of it is, the allegation the government has done is to say, okay, whatever you need to pay on excise duty and VAT, we've removed it. But that dollar pain point is still there, and all of us will still bear the pain point. Don't forget, that this incentive that they're giving most times will benefit the sellers and not the end consumers.
Okay. Because
again, it is the sellers that have been given the waiver. The seller will still tell you that to move the goods from Tinkan Island to their store is at a price. Petrol has gone up as high as 970, 897. So they factor that into their own cost. The cost of storing those items, they factor it into it. So invariably, what the government think that they've removed in terms of tax incentive and custom duties, we, the end buyers, we will still meet it in terms of petrol pricing, the cost of transportation, and the cost of securing those goods by the sellers.
Okay. So
it is, yes, a good incentive, but at the same time, we, the end users, it will not benefit us.
Okay, thank you very much. So Mr. Timothy RIGBEMI, SORUNKE, as I said, is with us in the studio, a tax expert. And yes, let me start from this standpoint. Bill Gates, 2 or 3 days ago, said Nigeria's value-added tax system is so poor that government needs to rejig it and possibly increase their revenue generation. And of course, people like you believe that taxes are majorly a source through which government can generate money to service the economy, to service the budget, provide infrastructure for our citizens and the likes of that. So the increase from 7.5 to 10% is justifiable by government. Is it justifiable by government?
Well, the explanation given by the reform committee set up by government is that they do a research that where are the bulk of people, where are they spending their money? Rent, health, food. They now look at it that if they remove value-added tax from those areas, from those food, rent, health, for the common man, which populous majority of people are spending on, it will relieve them. Now, like you have said, we don't need to forget what is the essence of value-added tax. And you said it, and you have quoted Bill Gates rightly that it's a source of revenue generator for government. And government must provide services to its people. If then they are saying our food, our health, our rent, common man, everything you are doing, go with the fat, no fat for you again. How will the government generate money? They now, it's a kind of rejig. They now say, okay, there are some luxurious items that only for the rich. Why don't we move the 7.5% fat thereon to 10%? For example, I drink kai kai.
Let's say a bottle of beer.
A bottle of beer.
Maybe one per day.
I drink.
Fuel, you have said it before you came into the studio, that fuel has just been increased. I mean, the pump price from 580 to 465 naira now. Some are even sell at 870, some are sell at 900. While independent marketers are beginning to sell at over 1,000 naira. So if we are still coping with all of that, so do you support, do you want to support government that this is the right time to jack up the VAT?
Well, it's not a matter of supporting government or not. But the simple question is this. Remember, this value-added tax was 5% previously.
Yeah, under former President Buhari.
February 2013. It was moved to 7.5%. And they are thinking now that we want to move it from 7.5% to 10%. But who are the people that this thing will hit most? Which we are not yet there. We have not gotten the best way. So when you are now doing one thing and the other to see the best way for this, and they now move the rate from 7.5 to 10%. And my question now is this. If you are saying now is not the best time, my question is from 10% to 50%, it's a way they are looking for the best possible ways. They are not there yet.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Now, you are saying the government is looking for the best possible way to generate revenue. Perhaps you want to change your mindset a bit, possibly. Just let me give you a clue to that, that possibly you want government to have classification of value-added tax. But he said the rich men, the rich people in the society should pay that 10%. And for those items that the common man will want to buy, then VAT should not be on that. But how would they be able to monitor that and get effective results through that one? And so that's why I'm coming up with that proposal that perhaps we want to align with the fact that there should be a classification. For the rich men, let us give them 15% VAT. For those who are not in that class, they should go for 7.5. Just a proposal. So what's your reaction to that?
Well, so again, it makes it very difficult when we start having classification of VAT, 7.5%, 10%, and all of that. I know that the former CITN chairman will agree with me that I don't think that we have an effective taxation system, right, that can allow for all of that process, and it would only make it cumbersome. Even the process as it is right now is cumbersome, right? If you decide to pay, e.g. VAT, right, before the due date, by the time you're already 16th, 17th, their portal is already a mess. Right, and they are working around it. I agree that the current FIRS chairman is doing a lot in terms of the internal reform. So I don't think we are mature enough to start experimenting on some of these legs. Rather, what I would have thought of really, which is, and I mean, I agree with the former CITN chairman when he says that, oh, the tax burden is being removed from an average man, right, to the wealthy. But don't also forget, sir, that we are also in a country where there is a total erosion of what is formerly called the middle class. So it's either you are rich or you are poor. So by all means, I can categorize the former CITN chairman as the people in the very rich bracket because it does not look very poor. So we would, and by the time we look at all of these things, we would see that the people that we thought were trying to save, the average people, will eventually move into that bracket of the very rich, and then more tax bodies will be added to them. Now, we need to look at things holistically. And you know, when they were speaking, the first question I asked myself is, you are saying on my rent, it is VAT exempt with this new provision of the law. But don't forget that that money has to move from my account to whoever's account I am paying. And on my account, there's a VAT charge on it already. Because by default, the bank passes a VAT charge on my transaction.
Correct.
So whether my landlady decides to exempt me from tax upon VAT or not, I have paid some form of VAT. Which are the things that we need to critically look at. So maybe, and again, I say, in terms of policy formulation in Nigeria, there has to be a wider sample audience, and there has to be a clear implementation process into all of the things that we want to do. Are we ready for this tax increase? Maybe not. Maybe we need to first of all stabilize the economy to ensure that even people will be willing, more than willing, to say, okay, we can see the incentive from the government. We can see. I'll give a clear example. Don't remove that on transportation. Make CNG buses available to people. If you now decide by yourself to put your car on the road, then you cannot blame the government for taxing you for it. Because we have made an alternative for transportation. If we say there are government buses available, there is a rail system available, make use of that and it is tax exempt. But you think by your own doing that, no, I am too big for it, then when we tax you, you cannot blame us. If the government is saying, oh, we have made provisions in Kuto market, for example, where people can buy food and it is tax exempt, right, in this region, we create some sort of tax exempt region for people to purchase, right? It makes more sense. If you now decide to go to any big luxurious supermarket to go and buy your stuff there, it is your headache. So first of all, we need to create all of this model to ensure that it is systemic, rather than saying, oh no, we would exempt the food and all of that, and then some people will pay on certain things. No, we need to create a system, a workable system around it that can be gradually implemented. And I'll end up by saying this. This was the government that said a couple of days ago that they are giving traders up till a certain timeline to regulate the prices of commodity. The question is, how do you want to implement it? You don't determine the price I buy my goods. If I'm shipping my stuff from Kano, you don't determine how much I pay on transportation. So how then do you now want to regulate the prices at which I sell the stuff? But if you look at the model that Lagos State has done with the OG ecosystem, is to put everybody in an open market on specific days to say, if you come and buy within this ecosystem, this is how much subsidy you have. There's a 25% rebate, so you can get your stock lesser at 25%. Now, those are the incentives that I think we should first of all target to say we would create this model, workable model for every